So, Greta, tell us about your writing process for this movie.
Well, it took me a very long time to write it. I tend to take a long time to write because I wish I didn't, but that's just kind of how it goes. I started with wanting to make something about home and how home is something you only can really understand as you're leaving. And I knew I wanted the core of it to be a love story between a mother and a daughter. And I start usually with a hunch and a kind of general sense of it, but I don't know what it's going to be until I start making it. And I think I spent a lot of time letting the characters talk to me and tell me who they are, and then I wind up with a very long draft, which I then have to cut down. And that's what I did on this one. And then I don't write with actors in mind, but if I had, I would. There's no better actors I could have possibly thought of to have to work with. So,
Saoirse, you and Greta sort of connected at the Toronto Film Festival in 2015. You both happened to be there, and you had a kind of read-through, I guess. And can you talk a little bit about what happened and why you became involved in the film?
Yeah, I mean, I became involved or wanted to be involved instantly as soon as I knew it was Greta's script. She's someone who I've always admired and always been a very big fan of. Um, she knows that. And I read it, and of course I loved it because look at how great it was. And we did a Skype meeting, which was the giddiest Skype meeting I've ever had. It was not professional at all. It was like two best friends that hadn't seen each other all summer and had finally come back together. And then we met in Toronto, and I remember I had just flown in to do press for Brooklyn, and Greta had flown in from a film that she had been shooting on, and we went through the whole script, and it just felt like you had kind of met your person a little bit. It felt like you met the person that you just want to make everything with, you know, which means you have to put me in every single one of your films now.
it's in my
You've all
contracts
witnessed
now. I go with her.
But yeah, and that was it really. We clicked, and then a year later we got to make it. But it was lovely also after Greta allowed me to come on board that we had the year to sort of stay in touch and talk about things and meet up in New York, and it was good to have that time to let it breathe a little bit, you know.
Laurie, you and Tracy had sort of traveled in the same circles in theater, but you had never worked together before, is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
And so what was it like kind of creating a family on set? Did you guys do some rehearsals, or how did you sort of find that?
Saoirse and I got to rehearse, and I hear that you're
Yeah,
upset that you never got to rehearse.
I didn't get any damn rehearsal.
But I knew that Tracy and I would be on the same page right away. We just share the same, I don't know, work style, I guess, and sense of humor. And everything was on the page. Everything was scripted by Greta. So it was really easy to click into this family dynamic.
Tracy, as a writer yourself, what was your experience reading the script? What did you make of it?
It's what you see up there. The movie in my mind when I read it is the movie that Greta made. That's not always the case. The script was very tight. I don't remember it going through a lot of changes between the time I read it and the time we shot it. I don't recall it going through a lot of changes on the set. I mean, she was open to change stuff if we needed to, but for the most part, it was all there. It was everything you need to play the role, which makes our job just that much easier.
Jon, the music evokes a very specific moment in time. Can you tell us what your conversations were with Greta about the music for this film?
Well, it's supposed to be just that moment in somebody's life. You know, you sense there's supposed to be more, but you can't articulate it yet. And, you know, we all understand that one. In fact, it's a point you can find yourself in multiple times in your life. So there's a certain sort of bittersweet thing to that, yearning, but it's non-specific. So it was more about chasing something that echoed that feeling. And usually for us, when we were sitting around working, when it was right, we knew it, and we'd both sort of point at the same time, and then it was done.
Saoirse, is there a difference when you're acting for someone who's also an actor?
I think there can be, yeah. I mean, in this case, there definitely was because, well, yeah, actually, any time I've worked with a director who's also an actor, there's a sensitivity there and an understanding for what we do, and regardless of how an actor works, the sort of process, I suppose, that an actor's mind goes through when they're creating a role and all that. And, you know, even if you're kind of, you know, you have a thick enough skin, I think it's a vulnerable thing to do. And so to have someone who is so sensitive to that really helped, because Greta could be strong for us when we needed someone to be strong, and she could allow us to take the lead when we felt we could do it on our own. I mean, it honestly felt like she was our mother for the whole thing. It did, and I think that's what a great director does. It's like the equivalent to a great parent, somebody who, like, you know, gives you that discipline and that structure, but also gives you like the love and the freedom to feel like you can do anything.
Greta, you had done a lot of different jobs on films. You've written, you've co-directed, you've acted, and you've been in many independent films where you have to sort of help out with all the gigs on a set. How did you decide that this was the movie where you were going to take on directing solo?
Well, I've always wanted to be a director. I've always specifically, you know, be a writer-director, something that I wrote. And like you were saying, all these things I've done, I didn't go to film school, so this all this time that I've spent on sets doing different jobs has been my film school, and it's an extraordinary way to learn, because I've been able to be around so many great directors and cinematographers and sound mixers and production designers and costume designers, and I've gotten to see how different people run things and figure it out. And when I finished this script, I knew that if I didn't do it now, I would never do it. And there's always more to learn, but I think I'd reached the point where the learning would happen by doing. I wasn't going to keep learning on the sidelines anymore, and I just decided to jump.
There are a lot of great coming-of-age movies that capture sort of boy at the age that this movie depicts. Yeah. Not as many that capture a girl at this age. Yeah. Why was this particular age of interest to you?
Well, you know, I think it's what Jon just said so beautifully about the yearning for something and you don't quite know what it is. So there's that is so vivid, I think, particularly at 17. And for me, I wanted to make a film where the primary question of this for this young woman was that of her coming into her own personhood, and what does that mean to occupy that space. And I think often young female characters are given validation through being chosen as a romantic partner, and she has her romantic partners, but I kind of wanted to start from this premise of, you know, what if there are two guys and they're both wrong and the love story's with her mother? And that felt more true to life to me, and it felt like a way to explore her stepping into who she already is, in a way, and that's the kind of story I'm interested in.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.